When a friend told me he was thinking of trying a European river cruise instead of his usual ocean cruise, I had to sit him down and run him through the series of things that had thrown, surprised, and I had really not been ready for when I've been river cruising. Things that I want to share with you, as so many people I meet on river cruises come up against these same issues, and so it's worth knowing about them too. If you're new here, welcome aboard. I'm Gary Bembridge, and it's my goal to make it fun and easy to discover, plan, and enjoy unforgettable cruise vacations. Very quickly, once I was on my first river cruise, I realized it had very little in common with ocean cruising. It was much more like escorted bus tours that I've been on, for example, around Florida or even around Tanzania. A river cruise feels much more like escorted touring by river than cruising on a river. Why is it so similar to escorted touring? Well, first of all, size. It's a smaller, more intimate group. You have 100, maybe up to a maximum of 200 or so passengers. Everyone gets to know who you are. Everyone gets to know you as you would on an escorted tour. So it's definitely less good if you want to be left alone or don't really like mixing that much. The format and structure are reminiscent of escorted tours that I've been on. It's regimented. There's a strict fixed daily schedule with kind of narrow windows of time to do everything and limited choices. Everyone does the same thing at the same time: eating, tours, briefing, and so on. Let me run you through a typical river cruise day to illustrate. You have an announcement in the morning to get you up, and that can be early, around 7:30 to 8 in the morning. So it's not particularly good if you're a late riser. You then have about an hour or so for breakfast, and then you're off on your first included morning tour. There may be a choice of tours, by the way, and you're normally split into groups. There'll be a slow walk option and so on. You then head back to the ship for lunch, which you then have about an hour to do as well, and then you sail to the next port, or you'll go off on another tour, or you're simply just sailing. Then in the evening, before dinner, you have a briefing session on what's going to happen on the next day. You then, of course, have dinner, and there may be some local entertainment brought on board, or more normally, you just got the onboard pianist playing a couple of tunes. And you then basically repeat that whole process. Some days it could be a full day tour. So for example, when I was on a Viking Danube cruise, we went to Bratislava, that was a whole day tour because it's kind of far away from where we were docked. On an ocean cruise, you're free to plan and do what you want, when you want. There are, of course, options and choices in a daily program on an ocean cruise, which is packed full of activities with lots of choice throughout the day. You can opt out, you can opt in, but on a river, you don't have that degree of choice. There are very limited things to do. On an ocean cruise, you don't have to stick to the dining schedule, for example. On a river, there's usually only one dining venue. There may be a restaurant, for example, and some sort of informal option. For example, in the bar, there might be a light lunch served there for you to take advantage of. Food, though, is only available on a river cruise at these dining times. There is no room service. So, for example, I got a complaint just this week from someone who'd done many ocean cruises. Now, she went on a river cruise and was so frustrated to find that she could only get food at those set periods of time: breakfast, lunch, and a dinner. There was no way of getting food outside of those times. Of course, on a river cruise, you could self-explore if you want to, but it's not very common to do so. So for example, I decided I wasn't going to go on one of the tours when I was on an Avalon Rhine cruise. They actually came to find me to find out why I wasn't going on that included tour. You go on a river cruise to be part of the program, part of the group. So the first realization I had was that river cruise is not cruising as I knew it. It's an escorted tour that happens to be on a river rather than on the road. There are a couple of other key differences to ocean cruising I discovered through river cruising that I hadn't thought about enough, nor probably the consequences of them. Some of the differences are pluses. So for example, embarking and disembarking on a river cruise is really simple. It's fast, it's easy, unlike when you go on an ocean trip. It's pretty much like checking in and out of a hotel, really fast. There are no lines, there's no check-in hoo-ha. It's much more flexible in terms of the time you need to arrive and so on. Of course, I knew a river cruise ship is dramatically smaller than an ocean cruise ship, but I hadn't fully appreciated the knock-on effects that come with that. Unlike ocean ships, all river cruise ships are basically the same, and they all have the same limited facilities. They are the same size and shape, first of all because they're constrained by the height of bridges they need to go under, and the width because they need to go through the locks along the river. Once you're inside, they're all basically the same too, unlike on an ocean ship where there's lots of variety, lots of differences in decor and layout. On a river cruise ship, you have a lounge or a bar area where you have your drinks and your briefings that I was talking about earlier. You have the restaurant, which I mentioned earlier, which can seat everybody at one time. You're going to have a little reception desk. Then you have a sun deck, which may have a hot tub or a plunge pool in many cases. There are no entertainment facilities like a casino, shops, no specialty dining venue, no choice of bars, no production show, area or theatre. There's not entertainment every night. I like to work out, but found that most didn't even have a fitness room, or if they did, it was tiny with a bike, a treadmill and a rowing machine. They don't have a spa, though some actually do have a little massage room. So that was the big shock, the realization, having been cruising, that I was used to all these facilities, all that choice, which you won't have and don't have on a river cruise. Cabin choices are also limited. Basically, it's all about location. You either go under the waterline or above the waterline. Under the waterline is the lowest level of cabins, and you have a window about 3/4 of the way up, which is just above the water level. They're not my favorite cabins because I found them a little bit noisy when sailing, and they felt a little bit enclosed to me. If you have a cabin above the waterline with beautiful windows or a balcony, because the rivers are busy and they all call in the same places, river cruise ships dock parallel to each other. So even if you have paid that extra to have one of those above the waterline cabins, you may find it can suddenly get dark, and a few feet away from you is another ship with somebody basically staring back at you. The rhythm of sailing is very different to the ocean. Ocean ships tend to sail at night and spend the whole day in port. On a river cruise, it's pretty different. There's no set pattern like that. Some days you may call on 2 places and sail some of the day. Others you will stay in one place all day. Some days you'll sail at night and some you don't. It's more port intensive, and so you often call on 2 or even 3 places in one day. On the plus side, there is scenery all the time you're sailing, unlike at sea. And you dock in the heart of the places you're calling on, so you can basically walk right off into the action in that village or town or city. The distance you cover is so much less than by ocean. It's an intensive look at a region. I realized just how short the distances were on my last Viking and Emerald cruises. The tour bus and the drivers and the guides were the same at every stop. But they would actually be going home each night and then just driving to join us each morning. On an Avalon Rhine cruise, I had the choice of cycling between the 2 places where the ship was sailing that day because it was only around 15 miles away. I read on Cruise Critic that a riverboat might need up to 12 hours to sail along a distance of a river, a journey that would only take you 2 hours if you were going there by bus. On the plus side, unlike ocean cruise, there's no chance of getting seasick. There's barely any motion and movement on the rivers. So for the first time, I could entice my father-in-law, who's really obsessed with getting seasick, onto a cruise, a river cruise. Talking about sickness, there's no medical center, unlike on ocean cruise ships. I actually fell ill on an Emerald Waterways cruise between Bucharest and Budapest, and I kind of needed to see a doctor. I discovered the lines, though, there are no medical centers, there are no local doctors along the route, so they took me there and I got sorted out quite quickly. But on an ocean cruise, of course, if you feel ill, you have the medical center to go to. All of these I realized, and all these differences and things that make a river cruise difference very different to an ocean cruise experience also has a massive, big impact on who goes on a river cruise. Despite what river cruise line ads suggest, it's still a traditional crowd who go river cruising. The rivers where the bulk of European river cruising happens, like the Rhine, the Danube and associated rivers, are peppered with old historic towns and places. And the tours in these places are very culturally focused and usually are walking tours through the town. They focus on the history, the culture, and often the cathedrals, lots of cathedrals. But all of this stuff appeals to that audience much more. There is some change underway, and on more recent river cruises, I'm seeing more, for example, food and wine tours. For example, on my last Cross Europe Loire cruise, we had much more of these included, and we also visited more chateaus, for example. On Emerald Waterways and Avalon, I had more active hiking and bike tour options, and on Viking, we went to see performances in the evening of a small kind of opera group in Vienna. So there is change. However, The places river cruises go means they call on historic, cultural places. It's more laid back, and it, of course, therefore attracts people who are interested in that. It's not going to attract young families or young couples who want to go out partying, although some lines like Uniworld and Amber Waterways are trying to attract that crowd, but it does tend to be a slightly older, more calm crowd. Separate to age, the nature of river cruising will, based on what I've experienced, always though appeal to a specific type of traveler no matter their age. When I chat to people on river cruises, they tell me the format of river cruising suits them because they like that it's a curated, highly organized tour. All they have to do is decide which river they want to go on, when they want to go, and which cruise line they want to go on. And then that's the last decision they have to make, because the rest of the program is sorted in great detail for them. Every meal, every tour, any entertainment, entry into attractions, it's all planned, it's sorted out for them. River cruises, as I told my friend, are costly, especially when you compare the day cost of a river cruise versus the day cost of an ocean cruise. Now, admittedly, there's a few reasons for that. The ships are smaller than ocean ships and they can't amortize the cost as much, and you're paying to have a more intimate experience. And then there are lots more inclusions in addition to your cabin and all your meals. Many have some or all drinks included. Most will include beer and wine at your meal, at lunch and at dinner, for example, as a minimum. Excursions are included, Wi-Fi is included, often transfers to and from the ship are included. I do like to have the flexibility when on a vacation, and so I find river cruising probably a little bit more restrictive than often I like. And although I've enjoyed doing them, I don't think I would repeat many of the cruises I've been on, because I found, for example, when I went on my second Danube trip and my second Rhine trip, it was a little bit too familiar. We called on the same places, the tours were the same, we were seeing the same things, and there wasn't as much opportunity to do and look at things in a different way. So though I'm not sure I'd repeat a route, I would say to you, and I'd say to my friend, it is a fantastic way for seeing the interior of Europe in an intensive and a simple way, because it's curated, and certainly for me, therefore, trying new rivers appeals to me. I found this, for example, when I tried a trip on Emerald, which went from Bucharest to Budapest. I got to see all the former Eastern European countries that had made up Czechoslovakia and hear their stories, find out about the history. I saw the places that would have been much, much more challenging to do if I'd done a land-based tour. It would be much more complicated to see so much so quickly. There are also some themed river cruises that appeal to me, like the Christmas markets, which are exciting because you go right into the heart of all the key Christmas markets. So I look at river cruising when I'm looking for something very specific like that, and I don't want to spend much effort planning. I just want to give that to somebody else to do. I'm prepared to be scheduled, organized, and make very few decisions. And that's my advice to my friend considering trying one out. Think about if that's what you want. Now, to find out what the best river cruises to do and lines to go with, watch this short playlist of 2 videos where I reveal the must-do river cruise trips in Europe, starting with the best first and second cruise to do and which lines to do them with. See you over there.